Hello, folks. How are you doing? You know, what sickens me is that evolutionists who are big top dog scientists, uh, they promote evolution as though it's scientific. And it's really not. It never was. It's an ancient philosophy. And, uh, and it ran into modern science and got crushed like a bug. If evolution theory was scientific, scientists would treat it scientifically. Hey, Brother Luke, how are you?
Fantastic, brother. How
Good.
are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay, I guess, man.
Are you
Complaining won't change
are you
anything.
live? Are we live right now? Is
Yeah,
this
yeah,
private?
yes, sir, we're live.
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask you a private question, so I'll wait till later then. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm doing great. Nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Boy, you've been having a lot of videos doing Bible study lately. I haven't joined on them. I'd like to. My problem is that I don't know as much about the Bible as you do. It'd probably make me look like an idiot.
Well, I'm joining your conversation. I don't know much about what you're talking about half the time either. But so yeah, what part of what time zone do you live in anyway?
I'm in Central Time.
Central Time. Yeah, the the stuff I do is Wednesday and Sunday, 1 p.m. Pacific. So that would be 3 p.m. your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if you don't ever feel like you have to haul all the answers about,
Wait, you're in Pacific Time, you said? So,
yeah,
yeah, what time is it where you are now? It's 9:43 p.m. for me.
it's 7:43,
Yeah, so that's right. 2 hours
7:48.
behind me. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you don't. I don't claim to have all the answers about the Bible, but if I don't know, I'll just admit it and
Well,
try to figure it out.
I noticed that you had like four or five character studies of Job, one after another. Man, there must be an awful lot to study about Job.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's a fascinating book. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. We're not even probably maybe a third of the way through the Book of Job. By the time I get finished, I'll probably have maybe 10 studies of an hour, each one an hour or 2 hours long.
Wow. One of the things that fascinates me about the book of Job is being somebody who's heavily into the creation evolution controversy. I see so many statements about creation in the book of Job, especially chapter 38. There's a number of statements about geology of this planet. Things There are actually things in there that modern man didn't discover until the 19th or 20th century. It's fascinating. The mechanisms of the flood, which explain the continents moving, the rolled mountains, the hydrologic cycle, the fact that light moves distance over time. All these things are in the book of Job. It's just like God's way of saying, um, uh, you evolutionist fellas out there, read this and eat dirt.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. It's not the primary subject, but you certainly do have some of that in the content, and to me though is um, I struggled for many years just trying to figure out why in the world God permitted Satan to do those things to Job. And to me, that's the most fascinating part of it is that the conclusion I came to about why he would even let the Satan, abuse Job in so many ways.
Right.
But it's it gives you perspective.
It is. That's, I think, a question that many people have struggled with is to figure out why did God allow Satan to do those things to Job? If he was a righteous man, God said he was very righteous, apparently, because he said there was no other man like him on the earth. So Job must have been the most righteous man that lived on the planet at the time.
Well, you have suffered in your life, yourself and within your family, and there's hardships that you have to deal with. I've certainly had, especially in 2014 was the hardest year of my life with
Really?
dealing with a lot of health problems. So you really can get perspective because we can always say, well, look, no matter what's happening to me, how does this compare to Job, and how did Job deal with it?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, what is the? Do you have a theme for this tonight's talk?
Yeah, it's kind of going to talk about how evolution theory is not science, but it's an ancient philosophy that's been dragged into modern science by people who, are unwilling to acknowledge that God is the creator, and that He made everything and they made us. So they've taken modern science and they've tried to bend modern science to fit the ancient philosophy, trying to transform it into a scientific theory. But they never have been able to, and they never will be able to, because it's not science. It's not scientific. God did, in fact, create everything, and you can't make evidence that doesn't exist. You can only look at the evidence that does exist and interpret it with your Darwinian eyes, your evolutionist, naturalist, materialistic eyes. And that's what they do. It's an old idea. For example, Aristotle and Democritus and some of these other ancient philosophers wrote of evolution theory. And they had the idea that one kind of creature begets another kind over time, and that this phylogeny idea, that everything that can be taxonomically organized by type, but not only that, but that one type ultimately produced another type of life. And so that idea is not new. Darwin wasn't the first one. The idea existed thousands of years ago. But what evolutionists do today is they attempt to they look at what does exist, and they interpret it through the eyes of the philosophy and then declare it science. You see, they claim that there's scientific evidence for it when there isn't a shred. It's not even science. It's actually anti-science. It's actually opposed to science. It degrades science, does harm to science. For example, evolutionists have said for 50 years that the majority of our DNA was junk. It was garble left over by random mutations over the history of man's evolution. But science has proved that all that information, all of that DNA, 90-something% of it, they said was junk. It's actually critical information that has function and develops the human being during the embryonic development, and it's in regulatory information and whatnot. And so they held back science of genetics for 40 years because they claimed that most of the DNA was garbage and they wouldn't study it. They only studied the codes in the DNA that relate to protein production. And so they held back genetic studies. If they hadn't done that, they would have spent a lot more money studying the majority of the DNA molecule, and we'd know a lot more today about DNA than we do. That's how evolution damages science.
Well, I wasn't familiar with Aristotle's concept of this, but how far back do you think it can be traced, the origins of that idea?
Well, if we consider the origin of the universe part of evolution, and I think it's a cosmic evolution idea, and from cosmic gets the biological comes. Once you get the planets, then you can have the biological. So it's really just a long system of evolution. First the universe evolves, and then the planets evolve, and then life evolves from the planets. So it's all really part of the same idea. But the idea of cosmic evolution goes back to the Hindu Brahmins a couple thousand years before Christ, who had the idea that God became a cosmic egg, which was minute, and exploded, and there you got the origin of the Big Bang theory. Right?
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking about these different aspects of evolution theory, is in Buddhism, and I think would also apply in Hinduism, is the idea of the evolution of the soul, how through reincarnation they think the soul evolves and your soul advances until it finally becomes as part of this this God consciousness.
Right. They had this idea that if you start out small, and as long as you keep doing well, you'll keep evolving into a better and a higher form, that eventually you'll become a chipmunk. And then, the chipmunk eventually, if you're a good chipmunk, not a mean one, you'll become a dog, or something. If you're a good dog, then maybe I'm not giving the exact lineage they have. I don't really know what it is, but they do believe, that fish evolved and ultimately produced men. And so, and then of course, if you're bad, then the idea is you go backwards. You know, you live a bad, if you're a bad chimpanzee and, you know, you're mean and greedy and you steal other guys' foods all the time and beat up on the weak ones, well, you might come back as a squirrel. You know, you got to start back. And so it's a really twisted sort of philosophy.
Well, in at least in these Eastern religions, they do have the opinion that there is a mind behind it all, but it's not theistic; it's deistic, where it's just some kind of a life force or energy force or uh, consciousness that we can't come out of.
Hmm.
But instead of a personal theistic type of a God.
Right.
Whereas the difference, though, between atheistic Darwinism is that they eliminate the whole concept of a creator and just they want to. Basically, they're trying to find anything that they can rest on rather than resting on God.
That's right.
God is totally unacceptable. So they talk about the God of the gaps. Well, they take the opposite approach, where we think if we can't explain something, we just trust God. And if they can't explain something, they can't trust God. They have to say it's anything but can't possibly be God.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Anything to deny God, they'll believe almost anything, but that God made it. That's exactly right. And that's been my experience with debating evolutionists and atheists for as long as I have, is that they're willing to believe almost anything, but that God made it. They'll believe nature created itself, or nature is eternal, which contradicts science, the philosophy of science. And it's just illogical. It can't logically be true because all things have a cause. That's empirical science. Everything that is has a cause. A pool ball, and the thing always has its explanation for itself outside of itself. For example, you can't discern where a pool ball came from by looking at the pool ball. You have to go outside to find who manufactured the pool ball. Well, the same is true for everything, every single thing. And like a squirrel, where'd the squirrel come from? Well, you look at the squirrel, it doesn't tell you where it come from. You have to go find the parents. The same thing is true for matter. Matter didn't come into existence without a cause. It can't have always existed. It has a cause. Its existence has a cause. And so the cause being outside of matter is by definition supernatural. So even the philosophy of science proves that God created the universe because matter cannot have created itself. It has an external cause to itself. And that cause can't be part of the universe. So since the cause is not part of the matter, the universe, doesn't comprise of time, space, energy, and matter, it's by definition supernatural. It's outside and above, beyond nature.
Yeah. There has to, if you do an infinite regression, everything has a cause, and you can. What's the cause of this, and then what's the cause of that? You can infinitely go back, and that is impossible. And you have to end up eventually. You have to conclude that there is one uncaused cause.
That's right. There is an uncaused first cause. Exactly right.
Let me ask you something here. I've been asked over the years many times about my success in evangelism. People will say, "Well, what kind of results do you get in your evangelism on the internet and in street preaching?" And I've always said that every single time I've preached that I get results, but the result is not always an immediate conversion and a believer, but sometimes the result is you're just planting seeds or watering seeds. There's always a result, and sometimes the result is an absolute rejection of the gospel, but there's a result. But how would you say that your results have been in dealing with atheism and Darwinism over the years? Have some people, I imagine that some people have been persuaded by your efforts.
Well, that's difficult to gauge. I have received over the years 4 or 5 messages from people telling me that they are seriously doubting or no longer believe in evolution because of my efforts. And that's a good thing. Now, even if they didn't just jump right out and say, "Hey, you know what? You made me a Christian," that's still a good thing, because if they don't believe in evolution anymore, then then they've got to start thinking about what is the cause. Then maybe the Christian is right when he says Jesus Christ is the creator. Maybe that Hebrew God is the real deal. And so that's a good thing. I had one message from one fellow tell me that he seriously doubted being an atheist anymore, and he thought that creation and the existence of God were likely the truth because of my messages, and he thanked me for that. So even though I didn't get confirmation that he had become converted to being a Christian, he said he acknowledged that he had become theist at the very least, and was investigating the case for Christ. And so that's progress. If I can just do that much, maybe the Holy Spirit will water the seed the rest of the way. So I wish I could say that I have had 30 or 50 messages from people saying, oh wow, what you did was, you converted me. It just hasn't happened. It's only been 4 or 5 people that have contacted me. But now I figure, if 4 or 5 people who took the time and swallowed their pride enough to contact me and say, you know what, you've made me doubt the stuff I believed in, I'm starting to lean your way. There's got to be probably several times that many that have done so, but without contacting me. So I think there has been fruit. It's impossible to know how much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like I've known you on YouTube far back as I can remember. I've been on YouTube for, I guess, I don't know if it's over 7 years or 8 years now, but it's been quite a while. And it seems like as far back as I can remember, you've been there too. So how far back do you go on YouTube?
I opened my account in, I think it was April 07.
Yeah.
It's been 8 years now, I guess.
Yeah, I think mine was June 07, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so we started about the same time. I remember when I first started, I thought, being unfamiliar with how YouTube worked and everything else, my plan was to say, well, the Bible says this, the Bible says that. I'm going to teach what the Bible says, but I knew I was going to get the objection, well, that's what the Bible says, but I don't believe the Bible. So my first objective when I came on YouTube was to prove that the Bible is true. And so those were my beginning videos. I wanted to lay that foundation. If I was going to say that the Bible says this or that, I had to at least start off by giving a foundation so that they could say, well, okay, I believe the Bible. So now let's get our doctrine correct.
Right.
So I dealt with, probably the first 6 months on YouTube, I dealt with a vast number of atheists that were coming against me. And I did videos and video responses and argued back and forth with texting and video answers. And I had, I think there are at least 2 or 3 that I could remember, atheists that no longer were atheists or Darwinists that believed. And I was really, really happy with that. But that's, out of all the people I interacted with, that's a tiny percentage. But at least I did see some kind of results in that. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you one thing that comforts me, and I hope that if you've never considered this will make you feel better about what you're doing here, is that, we could be taken to be with the Lord as we speak. We could either die or have the rapture resurrection. But if we were to die right now, as far as I know, our videos will be up for the public to see for years to come, unless somehow there's the government or somebody ends YouTube and the internet. Yeah. So I'm just happy that in whatever results we've had, even after we leave, our work will be left behind, and for years to come, people will be looking at your defense of creationism and your ministry. So I think it'll yield fruit for a long time to come.
Well, I hope so. Same for you. if I guess maybe there's some kind of stipulation in Google software whereby it looks to see if there's been any activity on the channel by the user or the owner of the channel. And if it hasn't been by X amount of time, it warns the user and warns them again, then deletes the channel if it's not used anymore after X period of time. That would seem reasonable. Don't know how long that would be. I figure it would be probably quite a while, though. I think a year maybe or more. So
Well,
probably at least maybe several, I don't know, but yeah, it will. Even if, like you said, if something happened to us, I guess they'd be up there for a good while, I guess, afterward.
I think that if that is the case, then it would be wise on our parts to designate some kind of a beneficiary or a trustee for our YouTube channels so that they can at least keep it active
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah, I thought about that idea. In fact, um, I thought also about burning all of my YouTube videos to a DVD and mailing them to a good friend, trusted friend, in case something was to happen and they wanted to share what I have. They could create another channel or they could upload them to their own or something.
Yeah, I did do that. Two people actually that I've met through YouTube, because I had that same concern. Two people volunteered and they actually did made them into DVDs and then sent them to me, so I have them. But that was a long time ago. I have like 450 videos,
Yeah.
and out of 450, probably a third of them are an hour or 2 hours long.
Wow.
So there's a lot of content, but at least the first 100 videos or so when they were like 10, 15-minute videos, I did have them turned into DVDs, and I have them here in the house. But yeah, that would be good to at least know that you've got that archived and saved.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And if you think about it, Brother Luke, why would somebody devote so much of their time and their effort to sharing an idea on YouTube unless it was something they firmly believed in? I think, if you said, well, an atheist has been on YouTube for 5 years and he's been doing the same thing, oh, that's evidence that atheism is true. Well, it's evidence that he believes firmly in atheism, or he wants to. But I'd say because the Christian position is true, it's evidence that it is true. So, the fact that Christians are so dedicated to doing this, putting out, doing this much work to share the truth, is evidence that it is true. Now, like again, somebody could say, well, the atheist can do the same thing for atheism. Does that mean that atheism is true? No, the difference is this: the atheism is not true, and Christianity is true. So it works for the Christian, but it doesn't help the atheist. Unfortunately, atheists do proselytize and preach in the world. And the thing that bothers me the most about atheist evangelists is that not that they so much that they share information with other atheists and they get together and share ideas. But what bothers me is that they put their content on the internet, and they might unduly influence the mind of some gullible 10, 12, 13, 15-year-old kid and lead them to disbelieve in God, which would be a horrible crime against that child.
Yeah.
That's the thing that bothers me the most about atheist evangelists.
Yeah, and an atheist might see this differently, but to me, if we look at Pascal's wager, if it turned out that our faith was wrong, what harm have we done? If nothing else, people got some kind of hope for their lives and after their lives. But an atheist, if they prove to be wrong, all their efforts, what they found is that they end up lost and destroyed in the lake of fire and the second death, and all the people that they turned against God through their atheist teachings, look what the harm they've done from theirs, where no harm is really done. Even if it turns out we are wrong, of course, I see that there's really no chance. People have asked me, well, what would it take for you to change your mind about this and not believe anymore? What would it take?
Yeah, I've had that so many times asked of me. Yeah.
Yeah, not only as my study of the Bible over 29 years now been constantly just reinforcing and strengthening my faith, but my own experiences of miraculous things. I have a video called Signs and Wonders, and I've seen miraculous things done that are my own personal experiences that have reinforced and solidified my faith.
Yeah.
So
I've had atheists ask me that same question, and then when you say, they say, what would it take to make you no longer believe? What kind of evidence could exist that would cause you to no longer believe? And they expect that you would say, well, if somebody could prove to me that blah blah, and then they would say, well, that there is something that could be wrong about your belief. But my answer is always, well, nothing, of course. How can you disprove what I know to be a fact? Me. And then, of course, they complain, so look, you're not believing because it's true, you're believing because you just believe you believe, that kind of thing. And my response to them is always, well, there is something that is true and there is something that's not true. What I believe just happens to be that which is true. I'm always going to come back to that default. It's the truth, period.
Well, I remember so well when I first believed. I didn't have anything except reading the scriptures and having faith at that time.
Yeah.
But over the years, my faith has been strengthened through study of apologetics, and to me, the evidence has just built up and so much that it's insurmountable. But in the beginning, it was pure faith. And even now, it's faith that's important, because I'm reminded of when Jesus had appeared to the apostles. He was resurrected, and the only one that didn't see him was Thomas. And when they told Thomas about it, he didn't believe it. And he said, I'm not going to believe unless I see him and feel him and stick my fingers in his wounds.
Yeah.
Jesus appeared to him, and he touched him, and he just said, come and touch me. Thomas fell on his knees and said, my Lord and my God. And he said, now that you've seen, you believe, but blessed are those who have never seen, and yet they believe. And there's something about faith that when we trust Jesus, even though we didn't get to see him and feel him, touch him, we trust him anyway. That he values that more than to me. That's why it says faith is it's impossible to please God without faith. And God values faith so much for some reason.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why. And maybe it's if we consider it to be trust. I mean, isn't it valuable to you when you know that when someone really trusts you? Well, that's I think how God sees faith. If we will just trust him, he puts a great value on our trusting him.
Absolutely does. That's true. Let me tell you a little story about. I'll make it brief. About I guess probably the first time that I realized that God was had made himself a part of my life, because he saw it down in my heart that I truly did believe in him and in Christ. That I even if I wasn't following after him at the time and wasn't living as a Christian, he was letting me know he did something to me. He used me, and in so doing, he let me know that he has always had his eye on me and wasn't taking it off. I got up. I wasn't a churchgoer. I got up one morning. I was about 25, I guess, 24, 5. And I got up one morning and I thought to myself, I don't know why. I just feel like going to church. So I'm going to go to church. So I got up, and I got dressed and I went to church. And I sat down in a pew, and there was a little old lady about close to, I guess she was in her early 80s, who sat next to me. And when the service was over, we all stood up and started to walk out. And she said, "Oh, you're such a nice looking young man." And she took me by the hand. She was reaching out to somebody to comfort her. And she said, "You remind me of my son. He was about 35 and he just died of cancer." And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And she said, I don't know what to think. I don't know how to deal with this. She said, I just worry about him so much. And she kept saying that she was worrying about him. And I just turned to her and I just said, and I don't know where, I didn't get these words from myself. I know that the Lord put them in my mouth. I know for a fact. And I just said to her, I said, "Man, cancer can destroy the body, but it cannot hurt the soul." And she stopped me and she said, "What did you just say?" I said, "Cancer can destroy the flesh, but it can't hurt the soul." And she said, and her eyes got big as silver dollars. And a smile came over her face. And she said, "Oh my, that is the most wonderful thing." And she dragged me over to her little old lady friends and she made me repeat to them what I had told her. And they were all like, "Oh, that's so wonderful." And I realized in a plan, and I just thought, well, I got to get going. But it was nice to meet you. And she was just really trying to keep me there. She was patting my hand and holding my hand with both of her hands, patting my hand. And I kind of politely kind of squeezed on out of there. And I'm walking across the street to my car, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Boom, boy, God just used you. And because it hit me like a ton of bricks, I realized what had happened. She was grieving over her son because this was an Episcopal church. I am no longer an Episcopal. I was raised in the Episcopal church, but I don't believe in the things they or the Catholics believe in. I stopped going to this Episcopal church. But, they preach purgatory. See, I believe this woman was worried that her son was in a place of purgatory, possibly paying for his own sins, and cancer might have been part of that punishment from God. And when I told her this, that cancer could destroy his flesh but could not harm his soul, it changed her perspective in one day. And she stopped worrying about her son being in a place of bad. I said, "He's all right now." I told her, I said, "He's okay now. That's in the past." And that was, I think, the last thing I said to her. And I think I changed her whole life that day because she started, I think, from that moment forward, not worrying about, getting closure on what had happened. And she didn't worry so much anymore that her son was in a place, that he was still hurting, that this was over with and done, and she was in God's hands. And I realized at that minute that God had used me. See, I got up that day and went to church for the purpose of telling that little old lady that thing, to lift that burden from her heart. God used me to go into that church that day. God said, "Evan, get up. I got a job for you today. You're going to church and you're going to sit next to this little old lady and you're going to tell her this, because and these aren't going to be your words. They're going to come out of your mouth, but they're going to be from the Spirit. And you're going to tell her this, and it's going to lift her burden. And for however many years that old lady's got left on this world, she's going to not fret and cry every day about her son anymore. I'm going to use you to lift her burden." And it hit me like a ton of bricks on the way out to my car, just like boom. And I said, "Oh man." I realized in a flash what had happened. And I knew that God had used me that day to go to church just to tell that little old lady that
Do
thing.
do you believe you were saved at that point in your life, or that was?
No, I don't. I believe God was drawing me, but I was not saved.
Yeah, so God can, even before we get saved, God can still use us somehow, and that was like maybe your first taste of serving the Lord in some way, and even today you remember it, and you still have joy from serving in that way, and now, I mean, I don't think you have your account monetized, do you?
Um, well, yes, I monetize all my videos.
Okay, you monetize them, but
Yeah.
I'm not against monetizing necessarily, but there are people who um, uh, they're in religion business. I
For
mean,
money.
particularly
Right.
when you see the big churches, the mega churches, the televangelists. There's a lot of these people that it's really clear to anybody who has spiritual discernment
Yeah.
that they're in it for the money. And I think it was,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't remember if it was Peter or Paul, but he talked about, the people who are in it for filthy lucre.
Right.
Uh, but what you're doing and what I'm doing, in pretty much just about every day, we're doing something with our ministry work. And we're not in it for the money. I'm doing it
No,
because
absolutely not. I figure if I can get a little bit out of it, what's it hurt to, maybe it's a blessing from God a little bit, $100 every 6 months. Whoopie-doo, I'm
yeah,
getting rich, really? I don't think so.
I had I had a brother here on YouTube about 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer. I'll just call him Brother Ben. I don't know if he wants his whole name released, but he contacted me and said, "Brother Luke, I've noticed, I've been watching your videos for a long time. I had never heard of him before, but this is another thing that's encouraging to me is that sometimes people contact me and for the first time, and yet they tell me they've been watching my videos for years and how much it's helped them. So I always like to hear that.
Wonderful.
But he said, I've noticed that you seem to have a lot of technical problems, and maybe I can help because I work for Microsoft, and I can provide you with hardware and software and technical support. And he even offered financial support, which I don't need, but it was wonderful. The first time anybody's ever offered to give me financial support for my ministry,
Yeah.
but I did agree because my computer basically was just about dead. Everything was so bad that I was going to have to either quit or at least be inactive for a while till I could get some new computer and get everything working right. But he ended up sending me this computer I have here, and he put all the programs in it that I needed, and he's probably given me maybe 10 different times I've contacted him, and he's gone on my computer to do some kind of technical fix for me, and it's been wonderful what he's done. But so sometimes people can observe and see, hey, you have a need, and I want to help. But for the most part, I don't get any kind of compensation or any kind of help. I'm doing it because there's nothing better to do with my life. I mean, to talk about Jesus and the Bible, there's no greater pleasure, and I want to do that every day, not because it's obligation, not because I'm getting paid wages or compensation for it. I think I'm going to get treasures in heaven, as Paul described and Jesus said, but that's not my primary motivation. It's just that what is there better to talk to than Jesus and
Really?
talk about than Jesus in the Bible?
Right. If you're going to have a hobby, hey, that's a great hobby, man.
Yeah.
I'm like you. I'm not into it for the money. I mean, even if I did make a lot more money than I do out of it, I mean, I wouldn't be doing it for the money. Even if I made a lot of money out of it, I would still be doing it because I'm motivated to do it, because God has reached into my life and stirred my cup, and and shaken me, may change the way my head thinks, and I realize there's a great need for this out there. Other people need to know. And
Have you considered? To my knowledge, you haven't written a book. But have you considered writing a book on the theme you're focusing on so much, creationism?
I have thought about it. I've been thinking about it for years. I've just never put pen to the paper about it. I really kind of fear the idea, because although I consider myself a good writer, I'm not sure that I would do a good enough job at it. Writing an article on a blog is one thing, but to write an entire book requires a lengthy outline of what you're going to do, and a whole massive collection of information. And I don't know, it just seems undaunting. I mean, if I wanted to, I've studied this subject enough that if I just wanted to start hammering one out, and somebody said, okay, here you go, Evan, sit down and don't go to work for the next 3 weeks and just spend 8 hours a day writing and write a book, I could do it, because I just from what's in my head. But I don't want to, that's really not good enough. Unless you're a scientist, nobody's going to, you need citations and whatnot. And I have a lot of that too, but it's just packaging the whole thing in a way that would be interesting.
Well, I can think of a couple of people off the top of my head, like Josh McDowell and Lee Strobel, who don't have scientific credentials, and yet they wrote great apologetics books. Josh McDowell wrote More Than a Carpenter, Evidence That Demands a Verdict, More Evidence That Demands a Verdict. Lee Strobel wrote, Case for Christ, Case for Faith. I like a bunch of them, and they have made a great contribution in terms of apologetics, and their books are published, and I'm sure that it's given them an income that allowed them to maybe they had jobs they had to use to support themselves, and now it freed them up so that they can be supported through their writing. And maybe that will happen with you eventually if you decide to do it. But it says to me, I also agree that it seems like a really daunting task.
Also, did they put it in
Yeah, it could be, and it's a little scary to me. And then there's the idea that I don't know. I fear a lot of things. I fear what would I charge for the book, and if I wrote a book that some would say, oh, you're doing Jesus for money, you're just wanting to make money off of God, and that's not my motivation. But I tell you, it wouldn't hurt me if it sold $30,000 and put that in my pocket. Sure wouldn't complain about it. But yeah. I mean, it's not about money. It's about sharing the truth that I know for a fact in my soul, and it's an important message for the world. But I don't know. I'd like to do it. I'm also, I guess, afraid that I'd write the book and it would flop and nobody would buy it, and then I'd look foolish for writing this book. And nobody is, it sold 11 copies,
Well, you just don't know until you do it, and it might end up becoming a best-selling book, and you might end up doing a bunch of them, and then maybe end up getting a television or a radio program to go along with it, and not only could it free you up. I don't know if you're still at the age where you're employed and working for a living or not, but
no, I am.
Yeah, if you, maybe, but that would be a means to free you up so that your time could be even spent more full time in the ministry. My experience with that is, I of course worked. I'm 64. I'll be 65 in November, and I was able to retire after I turned 54. So it's been over 10 years I've been retired. I haven't worked for a living because what I did was I made a financial plan, and then prayed the Lord, if you bless my plan, and I'm projecting that I'll be able to quit my job and retire at this certain date. And if you will help me to make this all happen, that will free me up. And the time that I used to spend punching a clock and earning a living, I can spend that time in ministry, serving you. And it went exactly according to my plan.
Wow, that's wonderful.
So I've been able to spend the last 10 years, instead of working for a living, to spend my time street preaching and internet event ministry. Mm-hmm. Maybe the same thing can happen for you if you did it via a book. I don't know. I'm just an idea, because I think you've got all the knowledge in the world to do it. And as you said, you have the skill to write. I've never seen you write anything, but I know you're very intelligent, and I imagine you'd be a good writer too.
I'll give you a link to my blog in the text chat there. You might.
Okay.
Sometime there's an article right there pertinent to the subject of this hangout. Actually, it's called Evolution Theory Isn't Scientific, and I list. I'm considering the book idea. I really have been more in the last several months than before. There's really a good chance that in the next year or three, I'll actually sit down and say, okay, we're just going to do this. And I might actually do it. But on that blog article there, I list 15 things, and I could list 50 that are proofs that I won't call them proofs, but powerful reasons that we can know evolution theory isn't scientific. It's not science at all. And I think that I wanted to share some of that tonight with people. If I get any people actually viewing this hangout, we only have one so far. But if I could get more people, sometimes I have a hangout and people clamor to it, and sometimes it just goes bust. But if people do come in to this hangout, I'd like to share some of these with people. Because these are powerful reasons we can know evolution theory is not even scientific, that it never was. And one of the most powerful reasons is, I didn't even put in there, is that we can know that evolution is not scientific, is that it began with ancient philosophy. And now an atheist will say, well, the same's true of Christianity. And I will say, no, Christianity is not philosophy. It's a relationship with God. It's knowing God, who he is and what he has in store for mankind. That's Christianity. It's not a philosophy. There is philosophy to Christianity. We can philosophize it naturally. But it's not a system of philosophy. But evolution theory is. It began as, and really is still in its underpinnings, it's a philosophy, and it's not a science. If it started out in the modern era, if nobody imagined evolution theory or anything about evolution until 1925 or 45, then we'd have at least the grounds we could say. But evolution started out in a modern scientific era, and it began as science. We can't say that for evolution, though. It started in ancient times with philosophy about a subject that's supposed to be scientific, in a time when man knew absolutely nothing about biology, not a thing.
Yeah. I would say a step further that not only is it philosophical rather than scientific, but it's also become a religion or a faith, because there's really no substance to put to support it. It's all they have to have more faith than we do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is absolutely a religion. It's, religion. If you look it up in the Webster's dictionary, religion actually doesn't require a deity. Theistic evolution does, but there is a definition of evolution that doesn't require a god of any kind. It is described as a system of beliefs held to with ardor and faith. And that describes evolution theory beautifully.
Yeah, it does. Huh. Well, my knowledge into defending creationism and arguing against Darwinism and Darwinian evolution is small compared to your vast knowledge on it. But to me, the strongest arguments for our side is the information in DNA, and information can only come from a mind, and then also the principle of irreducible complexity.
Yes,
those are the two things that are just totally destroys, Darwinism.
Absolutely does. Those are complete refuters of evolution. The discovery of genetic, the genetic material, and realization of what it is by itself completely proves evolution false and proves creation. I mean, if you found a computer and it had a hard disk and on it was this unfathomably complex interdependent information that is superior to man's best computer programming technology, I mean, what would you think? You would not naturally just say, oh, well, nature did that, wind and rain. No, you would not. Our natural instinct tells us, oh, there's a mind behind that. There's an intelligence. This did not arise by nature. And that's what every evolutionist scientist admits. They all admit that it looks designed. Richard Dawkins says life has the appearance of being designed for a cause, purpose, he says. But then he turns around on the other side of his mouth and says, but it wasn't. It's absurd. Hey, listen, I got to go do something for my wife. I'll be back in about 1 minute flat. So okay. Talk about whatever you want to, but I won't be but about 60 seconds, maybe just a hair over. Be right back.
Sure. Well, what I like talking about is the Bible, and this is the Word of God. The Bible is not one book, but it's a compilation of 66 books. There are 39 books in the Old Testament, and there's 27 books in the New Testament, giving us a total of 66 books. And these books were written over about a 1600-year span by over 40 different authors, and these authors were from many different walks of life. They were fishermen and generals and farmers, and just a wide variety of backgrounds. And it was written on 3 different continents: Asia, Africa, and Europe. And yet, as a book, it shares a common theme. And the theme that can be traced from Genesis all the way through Revelation is what I call a bloody trail. I have a playlist called The Bloody Trail, and it shows how from the very first instance in Genesis, where Adam and Eve, they had sinned and they realized they were naked, and they tried to cover up their nakedness by taking fig leaves off a tree and making clothing and covering themselves up. So through their own labor, their own effort, they tried to cure the problem of their nakedness that was exposed because of their sin. But God said, that's not a proper covering. It's not going to do. He provided them with the skin of an animal, so that we have the first example in the scriptures of a death. Something had to die. Blood had to be shed in order to do a proper covering for Adam and Eve. So this is the very first example of what I call the bloody trail, the pictures or shadows of Jesus's future death on the cross for our sins. So that's what it is. The Bible is a story about how man needs God to provide the solution to his problem. The problem is sin and death. Everybody sins, and so God had to provide the solution to it. Jesus died for our sins, so he solved the sin problem. What about death? Well, everybody dies because we are mortal. Because of sin being inherited, we have kind of like a birth defect, a genetic disease, and it's called mortality. So we all die. To solve that problem, we put our faith in Jesus, and he gives us life everlasting through a promised resurrection. So the problem of sin, the problem of death are both solved by Jesus Christ. And that's what the Bible is. It's a story about how man has this sin problem and death problem, but it's cured, it's solved through faith in Jesus Christ. I don't know if you're back yet, brother, but that's kind of a brief summary of what the Bible's really all about. Now, Brother Evan, he was talking about Christianity earlier, and I think the word Christian and the broader term Christianity, unfortunately, it's like some other words I find in the scripture that is become so watered down, and people are so misinformed what it really means. And that's why, rather than saying Christianity, I like saying Christianity, because Christianity is a broad range of views where people who label themselves as Christians may be the farthest thing from Christian, according to what the Bible says a Christian is. The Bible says a Christian is a person who's relying completely on Christ for their salvation. But if you ask a typical person, what a Christian is, they'll give you a wide range of definitions and explanations for Christianity and Christian. So that's why I emphasize the name Christ. So I would call myself a Christian, because I want to emphasize Christ. I want to lift up the name of Christ. I want to draw people to Christ. I want Christ to get all the glory, all the attention, rather than me. I don't know if you're back yet, brother, but still not back. I hope everything's going to be okay with your wife. Well, I could go on and on talking about various things in theology, but I would say that my experience dealing with... Oh, okay, brother. Back now, huh? Are you back?
No, this ain't, no.
Oh, it's someone else. It's Israel. Hello, Israel.
How you
I'm
doing?
Brother Luke. My channel on YouTube is Sin City Preacher. Um, I don't know Israel or Westcott, something, whatever. But welcome. This is not my hangout. It's Brother Evans, Nephilim Free, and he had to step away for a few minutes because his wife needed his help. So I'm expecting back any time. But welcome. Hi. How are you guys doing?
I'm okay, man. Hey, do you hear any funny background noises on my microphone?
Yeah,
Like,
I was hearing like squeaking, a squeaking sound.
hang on. I think it might be my fan. Yeah, I come in Evan's room all the time when we have hangouts. Once in a while, I might miss one or two of them. But how about that? Does that sound any better?
Yeah, the sound quality is good now, except now that I'm talking, I'm hearing the squeaking again. But I'm going to mute mine, and you talk, and let me hear. I'll test it again.
All right. How about now? Still doing it?
No, your audio is fine. It's just when I talk. Maybe when I'm talking, you need to mute your mic. Why don't you mute your mic if you haven't already done it? Okay, yeah, now I don't hear the squeaking. So that was the problem. I guess we're going to have to make sure that we only have our mic turned on if we're talking. If someone else is talking, you got to turn the mic off. So I'll mute now, and one of you guys talk for a minute.
No, I got it fixed. I had cameraman turned on, and cameraman requires the admin of the hangout to allow people to be broadcast in it, because it prevents the monkey jammers from coming in and broadcasting all kinds of pornographic materials and whatnot, just to disrupt the hangout. You can not broadcast somebody until you see what kind of icon they got going up. I've had all kinds of monkey business, so it's a preventive measure.
Brother, while you stepped away, I tried to fill the void with a little Bible study for a couple of minutes, and then we got Israel and Westcott. Somebody just joined us a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah.
I'm only going to be able to stay with you for a couple of more minutes. I'd like to meet these two fellas or people, and then I'll probably have to leave you pretty soon. But at least I won't be leaving you all alone.
Yeah. These two fellas are friends of mine. They frequent my hangouts pretty often, actually. Israel and Westcott. Westcott I've known for about 2 months or 3. Israel I've known for a year or so, I guess. And they're good fellas. Both are Christian.
Hey.
Years.
Israel, yeah, I guess I have, haven't I? I've known Israel for actually about 6 years, haven't I? 5 or 6.
I think it's been 4 years. That's when I think I got saved, was 4 years ago through the other chat rooms.
Yeah, we met in Shock of God's chat room, I think, several years ago.
Well, I'm just curious why Israel chose the name Israel. Is that your actual name, or is that just your YouTube name, and what's the significance to you?
Oh, no, Israel's not my name. I choose Israel because of Genesis 3.
Which says, what about Genesis 3?
It says, or is it Genesis 6? I think it's 3 or 6. It says, I will bless thee that bless, I will bless them that blesses thee. I will curse them that curses thee. So I picked the name Israel Rocks. I want to be cursed.
Okay, and the other one says Westcott D.O. I don't see the rest of it. What's the full name for that?
Westcott Downs. It's just something I made out of thin air.
Oh, okay, Westcott Downs. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, then, it's a pleasure to meet
it's a
you.
horse race. So Downs is a horse race,
Yeah, I've heard of the Downs. I didn't know about Westcott Downs, but I've heard of some kind of Downs is where horses race.
Yeah, if you put Downs in the back of a name, then it means it's their horse race, whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't put it for that reason. I don't know, it just popped in my head just out of thin air.
Yeah.
But life's a horse race.
Yeah.
Hey, did anyone hear the Pope speak at Congress? He made claim that that Jesus as a man was a failure and the cross was a failure. You ever hear that?
What? Who said
No,
that?
Yeah,
The
I don't.
Pope said this?
Pope Francis. I'm just paraphrasing for you, but that's exactly what they said when Christ was on earth. He said that his mission, wherever it was, his ministry, he was a failure as a man, and the cross was a failure. I go, whoa! I go, major blasphemous. I go, wow!
Hmm.
I was stunned. He
Well, are
said
you
that.
sure he wasn't saying that people think that, or he might have said some people think that when Jesus was on earth, he might have said it that way.
No,
He,
I'll tell you a little bit about this.
But
he
I
Uh,
said,
don't know.
I made a couple of videos because of this guy Francis. I call him, instead of Pope Francis, I call him Dope Francis. And he has numerous things that, first of all, Roman Catholicism, even if he was a true Roman Catholic, we'd have a big problem. I have a playlist, Roman Catholicism Debunked, that shows the origins and history and false teachings of it. So you can watch that. It's about 10 hours long.
Wow.
But even if he was a Roman Catholic, I'd have an issue with him. But now, have you ever heard the saying, is the Pope Catholic? Well, it's like a joke. Does a bear, take a dump in the woods? It's like, of course the Pope's Catholic, yeah. But in this case, everybody's actually asking, is he really Catholic? Because he doesn't even seem to believe in Catholic ideas. He said, these are some of the things he said. He said that you don't even have to believe in Jesus or even God generically to go to heaven. You can be an atheist and you can go to heaven if you do enough good works.
What?
Yeah, I
Oh,
heard him say something like that.
yeah, that
that's
was like a year
Then
ago.
his last statement, he said that the cross was a failure. The
wow.
cross was a
Okay, maybe.
failure. He just said that on his last day. And in the past, he's also said that the Genesis account of creation is just a fable, and Darwinism is the true way God created man.
Wow. Mm-mm-mm.
So this guy is. If he was a real Roman Catholic, it would be bad enough, but he doesn't even hold to their basic tenets.
Yeah, the Catholics believe you can't be saved outside the Catholic Church.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. That's weird. That's bizarre. That's a nutbag right there.
I think my
You know,
first video I made on him was Dope Francis, the Roman Catholic heretic. So check that out.
I do, Luke, I do Howard floors for a living, and we were doing a Howard floor for a church. It was called the Church of, I think it said the Church of Christ, or Christ of Church. Um, but they say they depart themselves from the Catholic Church during the like 1700 or something. I could still consider them a Catholic because they do Catholic teachings. But anyways, they were putting a symbol in the middle of their floor. So we ripped up all their carpets, put floors in. We put we sealed the floor, and they put a design on it. And I know a lot of symbolism. I know a lot of demonic symbolism. I seen this symbol. I have no clue what it was, but we're praying, and it ended up in a circle, and there's 6 round dots in the middle of the floor. And in the middle of these round little 6 little dots, there's another man. So it's seven people in this dot. And they all get together in that spot and they pray. And I didn't realize. 'Cause I was looking at it. It's like I don't get the symbolism. I didn't understand it. Within the hour, I start looking at it. I go, oh wait a minute, dots, 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 dots. Okay, circle, circle, pray. I said, you guys come up here and pray. And he goes, yeah. And I go, you have another man in the middle or a woman in the middle praying. He goes, yes. I go, that's blasphemous. There's the 7 creation. That's God's never blasphemous. It took me an hour to figure it out because I'd never seen the symbol. I showed my Christian friends, and they said this symbol hasn't been around since the 20s or 30s. And they said now it's recently being popped up in these type of churches. And he asked me, he goes, you want to try this? I go, no. I go, that's pagan. I go, I don't want to do that. Well, anyways, he snapped at me, kind of. And then yesterday, I got yelled at by my boss. He told me the guy was furious because I told him I'm glad his wife died. and I never said no such thing. Because he lost his wife, and I was just explaining to him, I'm sorry, and all this. I'm not going to get into long details, but who. And when people claim they're Christians and then they attack you by what they're see we Christians we don't attack I don't feel offended at all, but most people when they feel offended you offend me and I'm gonna get you in trouble. They're not Christians because you're not supposed to do it to each other. You're not supposed to turn each other into your bosses or the government or whatever. You're supposed to handle it together. And it's so funny. And here's the thing, this guy gave my 2 coworkers a $200 tip. He didn't get me nothing. Does that tell you? Yeah, rubbing my face a little bit.
Well, brothers, I'm going to have to leave the conversation. Brother Evan, it was really a pleasure to talk with you again. I really enjoyed that time, and it was nice meeting you, Israel and Westcott Downs. Maybe I'll be able to join the conversation with you guys again sometime. I'll look forward to it.
Okay, thanks, Brother Luke. God bless you. Have a good evening.
All right. Good night.
Good night. That guy never ceases working for the Lord, I tell you.
I think I heard his ministry before, but I have to double check it. I have only a handful of people I'm subscribed to on YouTube. There's not a lot of people I listen to, but I listen to this man for 10 minutes. I already like him already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's tireless, man. Constantly working for the Lord.
24/7, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Most of his day, probably at least 7 or 8, 10 hours a day, something like that. And when he's not, sweeping his kitchen or cooking lunch, he's in there using the computer doing something for God, about the Bible.
Yeah. I think the hardest person. Now, I don't know this man, Luke, but to me personally, I think the hardest working Christian I have ever met, and this is no. I'm not saying it because I worship the dude, but I think it's Kent Hovind. I think he's the hardest person in his life who served the Lord. Like he's like 24. He's up until the morning making YouTube videos, and then he's up at 7 o'clock in the morning making more YouTube videos, and then it's like, this man is freaking just won't stop working.
I wish I could do that myself, but I have to earn a living, so I can't afford to do that.
I know, I want to do it too, like 24/7, but I just can't do it. I don't know how he get the energy to do it. So, hey, I'll ask you something. I was hoping you had a hangout tonight. What do you feel about Halloween?
I don't like Halloween because it's a pagan holiday. It's based on an ancient British holiday called All Hallows Day. It was a day that the Celts believed that evil spirits came forth from the grave and would haunt people. And they started wearing masks because the demonic-looking masks, to try to fool these spirits, because they thought if the demons saw these demon masks on them, they would think that they were demons too, and they wouldn't harass them, so they just bypassed them. That was how Halloween masks came into existence. And so, since it's really rooted in evil ideas, I don't approve of Halloween. And I don't really, if you just think about it in a more basic way, really, is it a good idea to fill the minds of children with all this carnage and death and haunted houses and blood and guts and scary stuff? I don't really think that's a good thing. I mean, I liked Halloween when I was a kid. I thought it was all fun, But I mean, was it really? Is it really harmless? I don't know that it's harmless. Well, parents say, well, you shouldn't let your kid watch that kind of movie because it's spooky and it gives them nightmares. Well, why you dress them up like a monster and take them out in the middle of the night?
Good point. Well, I noticed I don't celebrate Halloween like for the past I think 2 years, 3 years. I don't do Halloween. My cousin he owns us like this how many? I think it's like 10 acres, and he grown these cornfield and make a maze, and one for kids, one for adults. And I was in there working in the field today, I was thinking about going out there Saturday. This Saturday he's having like a family outing where kids go through the maze and they do games and stuff. And I was just wondering, you think I should go out there? I mean, because I know it's pagan. It's not Halloween yet, and it's not pagan. But um, what do you think? You think I should go out there? I need another perspective from another Christian.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Probably, what they do. So I couldn't comment.
Hmm.
Games and stuff. That's harmless, but what kind of games? I don't know.
It's harmless game. Just they what they do. They walk through the maze, and then like on the left, there's a dead end, and then they'll play not they're not dangerous games. They just do. I don't even know what the games are, but I know they're harmless games, and they get
Is it
candy.
Halloween or fall festival?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is it Halloween or fall festival? They say. Not that there's much of a difference in some aspects, but
Right.
Is it spooky
say
or
was it-
related to Halloween in any way, or is
did he
it
say
just?
it was Halloween, or what did he say?
No, baby.
Well, they're doing it this Saturday. Hopefully they can do it this Saturday just to give it a try. Give it a test run, and then like in a couple of weeks, they're doing another part of the field for adults, and they're gonna have like chainsaws and stuff like that. And it's for adults, but I don't think I'll go to that one. But the other one's for kids. Just
Oh, so it
is
is
that how?
Halloween
Is that
related.
how? Yeah, it's Halloween related, but it's not Halloween yet. It's not August, October 31st. It's gonna be like
It sounds like they're doing a haunted house thing instead of doing a haunted house. So doesn't it sound like that? Like they're trying to do a Halloween house, but they don't really have a Halloween house, so they're doing a field thing. Sounds like he's going to try to make extra money or something.
no. I tell you right now, it's not about he has money. I'm not too that to myself, but no, he loves kids. He's doing it for kids. He's putting a lot of time and money.
He's going to charge later. He's going to charge or anything.
I think he's giving out free food. I think there might be a fee for adults, but free for kids. But free food. He has he made a catapult. So you can shoot pumpkins and win prizes and stuff. And yeah, he grow a lot of pumpkins. He's doing a lot of stuff. He's been working out for close to 2 months, and it's just a family thing. It's harmless. It really is, but I still, in the back of my mind, in my heart, I'm thinking, man, this is kind of deceitful. This is like,
Well,
are
we talking about harmless physically, or are we talking about harmless spiritually?
Spiritually. That's why. Spiritually, not physically. It's not going to be harmful for the kids or for the family that come out there. It's spiritually, I've seen, there's somewhere I heard a man, an ex-Satanist. He said that the Halloween is like God. It's like the devil's the devil's like that's his game right there. He said that as a Satanist for 25 years, when he receiving all giving up all the devil's secrets, when kids put those masks on, they're all dressed up for Halloween, even adults, they get manifested spirits on them, at a certain age, of course, and it grows with them each year. It's the best way I could explain it. He does it way better than I do in great detail. But it makes sense. If you dress up like that, and it's
Well, you're
possible.
doing a physical thing that invites the spirit in, and you
Yeah.
don't know that you're doing it. And that's why I stay away from those kind of things, because I don't know what everything is involved in it, even though it looks harmless, it looks innocent. People are doing things to call spirits on themselves and don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's all set up for.
It's very harmless for the kids. Very harmless for kids. There's no danger for the
I'm not
kids.
going to call spirits on them.
I'm talking about physically. Yeah, it's a spiritual thing like that. You know, I don't want to be held accountable to it. You know, I don't want to stand before God in Judgment Day and He look at me. Hey, remember that time you were in that maze, doing that maze thing? You know, helping build that. I go, look, He's going to show me.
Maybe you have to go and pray. Maybe you need to go and pray over them. Pray while they're doing it. Keep the demons away.
Take
That's an
more.
option.
Yeah. Well, it's going to take more than just me.
Think about that. I don't know. It only takes one righteous man. God takes
Okay.
care of his stuff.
Okay, guys, I want to turn this hangout around. I want to go back to this original subject matter of it, if I may.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The idea of evolution theory being science or scientific. I'm going to give reasons why evolution theory is not scientific. Whenever I quote a scientist who is an evolutionist making a statement relating to evolution, which illustrates there's a problem with the theory, something they can't figure out, the evolutionists will claim that I'm quote mining and state that their statement is taken out of context and doesn't mean exactly what it says, just because that evolutionist says somewhere else in that same article or paper that he believes evolution is true. Whenever I provide scientific evidence from a scientist who's a creationist, who makes a statement relating to evolution, which illustrates a problem for the evolution theory, the evolutionist will almost invariably claim that he's not a real scientist or condemn him for doing bum science. If I cite a case of discrimination in academia or against a scientist who is an evolutionist proponent, evolutionist whose work has either directly or indirectly provided a discovery that illuminates a problem for evolution theory, the evolutionist will attack him. They'll throw him under the bus and saying he's been caught doing bad science. And if I cite a creationist scientist who's been discriminated against by the evolutionary scientific community, and the evolutionist will say the same thing. It's bad science because he's creationist. He doesn't understand science. He's doing bum science. See, when I ask for anatomical change, the evidence as evidence of evolution, the evolutionist will claim that it takes too much time. You can't observe it. When I ask for a mechanism that could cause that kind of change, which evolution theory requires, they say you can't observe the mechanism because it takes too much time. The point is, no matter what you cite, whether it's from a creationist or an evolutionist, it doesn't matter what it is. Evolution is true. For the evolutionists, it's always true. They will not allow their belief system to be challenged in their mind. And this is one of the reasons we can know evolution theory is not scientific. It's because they hold to it with such religious fervor, while at the same time refusing to consider all of the evidences against it, even if questions are brought up about it from an evolutionist themselves. See, if evolution were dealt with scientifically by these people, they would allow the evidence to speak to them, and they would seriously doubt evolution theory. But the fact that you can provide mountains of evidence against evolution theory and the evolutionist still argues it's true, even though they can't provide evidence or provide even a mechanism for evolution, and then will still proclaim evolution true, demonstrates something about the evolutionist. What it demonstrates is that they believe in evolution not because it's scientific, but because it must be true, because their worldview requires it. And see, that's one of the reasons we can know evolution is not true. It's not scientific, rather. And you can go circles for these people. For example, if a creationist asks, what is the evidence that anatomy changes over time incrementally to produce new anatomical features, which is what evolutionists claim? They'll say mutations cause polydactyly, which is, all that is the duplication of an existing feature, like if a person is born with this extra finger or toe. You know, that's the duplication of the information that creates the finger, and it gave them an extra finger. But see, polydactyly is not a new feature. It's an existing feature that's been replicated. So when you ask them, well, that's an existing feature. How does evolution produce new anatomical features? They'll say, well, they arise in the same manner as the polydactyl feature. Well, then if you say, well, what evidence is there that this happens in increments because we don't see it? And they'll say genetic change takes place, doesn't it? And variation takes place, doesn't it? The creationist will answer, well, of course. And they'll say, there you go. Because variation takes place and because genetic information can change, it's got to be true. But then you ask them again, but that's nobody's arguing that variety or genetic change don't take place. But what is the evidence? So you have to dig into it. You have to keep hammering them because they obfuscate. What is the evidence that these things produce new anatomical features? And they'll simply say that mutation acts upon existing information to create the new information necessary that codes for the new features. And then if you ask them, well, what is the evidence that random mutation acts upon existing information to transform it into new information that codes for new features? They'll say, random mutations take place, don't they? And the creationists will say, yes. And genetic variation takes place, doesn't it? And you'll say, yes. And you say, well, there you go. And you say, okay, so what is the evidence of that these things actually cause anatomical change? Because we don't see it occurring. And they go right back to their original argument, and that is that it takes too much time to observe it. See, it's circular reasoning, and they never provide the evidence or the mechanism, ever. And this is why one of the reasons we know, another reason we know evolution theory is not science, it's not treated as science by evolutionists. What were you about to say, Israel?
I would say they left science and went to and made a faith statement when they said we can't observe it because we didn't know in years. They left science and just made a statement with their faith.
That's right. Dr. David Menton, PhD in biology from Brown University, he's been involved in biomedical research and education for over 30 years. He said this. He said, the very name microevolution is intended to imply that this kind of variation accumulates to produce macroevolution through a growing number of though a growing number of evolutionists admit this, there is no evidence for this. Thus, an observable phenomenon is extrapolated into an unobservable phenomenon for which there is no evidence, and then the latter is declared to be a fact on the strength of the former. And it is this kind of limitless extrapolation that comprises much of the argument for evolution. So he's stating basically what I have said, that it's based on circular reasoning and a presumption that evolution must be true, regardless of the facts, and even though they can't provide the evidence of it. Macroevolution is supposedly microevolution over time. But when you ask the evolutionist what's the evidence that that's so, they can't cite any. They just say it happens. Therefore, macroevolution must be true. Because we can see microevolutionary change, which I disagree with being microevolution, and I disagree with it being evolutionary change. They'll say, well, variation and genetic change take place, don't they? And the creationist says, well, yes. And they say, well, there you go. Give it enough time, and it will create macroevolution. And then you're right back to asking them, what's the evidence that those kinds of changes can produce the macroevolutionary change? And they go into their long series of circular reasoning obfuscations.
It's not just circular reason, though. It's they make a logical leap, an illogical leap. That is, they're trying to. It's like saying, we got bricks, don't we? Yeah. Well, then it's a house. You see what I'm saying? I mean, that's their logical. Their leap is, okay, we got bricks on the lot. Oh, then it must be a skyscraper.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I mean, it's not. You gotta know, or I don't know how to explain it. It's just it's an illogical leap. It's like saying, I had a good example once. I can't remember it.
Yeah, I fully understand it. I can't give a good example myself, but I understand it.
Yeah, it's
They're making a mountain out of a. It's like saying, okay, I don't know. I can't think of a good example I had one time, but yeah, I mean, it's saying that because well, hey, why don't we make this logical leap? There are local floods, right? Local floods happen, correct? Then the worldwide flood could happen, no problem.
yeah. If we
Make
were
that logical leap.
yeah, if we were to make the same kind of error in reasoning, they'd scream bloody murder, wouldn't they? Malcolm Muggeridge, philosopher, journalist, and atheist who converted to a Christian, said this once. He said, I myself am convinced that the theory of evolution, especially the extent to which it has been applied, will be one of the greatest jokes in the history books in the future. Posterity will marvel that so very flimsy and dubious an hypothesis could be accepted with the incredible credulity it has. So I agree with him. I think evolution theory in the future is going to be one of the biggest jokes in the history of the world. It's going to be a sad point in history, just like we look back today at some things that have taken place in the past, and we shake our heads and say, oh, what idiots. Evolution theory will be the same way. And here's some more reasons we can know evolution theory isn't scientific. Because if it were, firstly, the theory would not exist. It would have to be discarded. If it were examined actually scientifically without presumptions, without assumptions, and without an unwillingness to dismiss all of the evidence against it and the absence of evidence for it, it would have to be dismissed. The fact that they refuse to dismiss it demonstrates that it's not even scientific. There would be
common knowledge.
Yeah, it would be.
It'd be a theory. It'd just be fact.
It would be. It would be so well demonstrated that there wouldn't be any controversy about it. Also, another reason is there would not be so much controversy over whether or not it is scientific amongst academics. Evolutionists, academics argue not just about whether or not evolution theory is true, but whether or not it's actually scientific. And if that were not, and if it were truly scientific, these academics would not be arguing as to whether or not evolution theory is actually scientific, much less true.
You know, it's funny you're bringing this up, Toy. I watched Expelled last night. You know, Ben Stein, or he made a video about all these scientists that's been fired from their jobs because they just even mentioned intelligent design. I watched it before, you know, but like a year ago, but I forgot all about it. I watched it again. I was shocked how bad, you know, they protect their theory. They protect it with a grain of salt. You know, you can't question it at all. Even the scientific facts come out that ID is possible.
Yeah, they strive to prevent any information, any knowledge coming forth that refutes it, especially if it looks like it's going to hit the general public. They work very hard, their fingers to the bone, to prevent that. Another reason that evolution theory isn't scientific is that evolutionists, if it were, evolutionists would need to endlessly invent theories with which to explain away the failures of the theory, such as punctuated equilibrium, the hopeful monster, dark matter, and dark energy. If evolution theory was scientific, they wouldn't invent theories to plug the holes in their theories. You would just say, no evidence, and go on looking for the evidence or whatever. But you wouldn't invent something that doesn't even exist or you have no physical evidence for whatsoever, or just complete fillers and plug the holes in their theory. If it were scientific, you wouldn't need to do that. Another idea is that random mutation is claimed to be the base mechanism of evolution, but 90 years of mutation experimentation proved otherwise, and yet they still won't stop claiming that random mutation is the base mechanism of evolution. That's another reason it's not scientific. If it were scientific, they would have to acknowledge that random genetic mutation is known to not be a mechanism for evolution. But you can't do that, because if evolution is true, random mutation must be the base mechanism for it. It would have to be, because there would have to be a continuous input of new genetic information for evolution to be true. And the only way that can happen is by mutation. And so therefore they have to keep clinging to the claim that random mutation is the base mechanism for evolution, even though 90 years of experimentation and millions of experiments with mutation have proven random mutation is no such mechanism. So they're not treating it scientifically, are they? Another reason is that there wouldn't be, if it were scientific, there would be a tremendous number of species living today with their anatomies that had new features arising in their anatomy incrementally. But we don't find that true of any species. Every feature of every living thing is fully formed and functional. There's no oddball things arising in the anatomy of any creature that's less than functional. That's what evolution would be producing in everything that lives on this planet. Another argument is that if evolution were true, it cannot be true. Because if evolution were true, it would be giving rise to defunct features that are not yet functional in the anatomies of many creatures. Evolutionists argue that's not true because features transform, but evolutionists are wrong in believing that transforming existing features is sufficient to produce evolution. You have to have new features. You can't get the fish to become an amphibian by modifying the existing features. You need new features. And that means there would be things arising in the anatomy of the organism that are not related to any other feature. But we don't see any such thing in any organism. There would be a continuous development like that in the anatomies of everything on this planet. And in truth, this would actually make organisms less suitable for survival. Natural selection should remove them. So actually, natural selection argues against evolution theory. Evolutionists fail to see this. They simply are blind to this fact. Natural selection actually argues against evolution theory because it would be continuously making new things that are less than functional or dysfunctional, have no function rather, in the anatomies of so many different kinds of living things. And if that were true, natural selection would remove them because they are not a benefit, they're a hindrance to the organism. And evolution would not move forward. So evolution theory is contradicted by natural selection, which is claimed to be one of the most powerful features of the evolution theory. Imagine that. Natural selection is said to be one of the base mechanisms for evolution, but it actually argues against evolution theory. Isn't that something? Yeah, I'll give you an example of what I mean. Okay, so if a creature has a tail, but it doesn't have a stinger in the end. Let's examine the idea of a scorpion. Let's say this creature that is not yet a scorpion and has no tail, no stinger in its tail, but it's evolving to become a scorpion. Now, unless you believe that the stinger appeared all at once, boom, fully formed stinger, you have to believe that the stinger came into being incrementally over time by slight advancements. But adding new features like a sac that holds something that can't be maybe a chemical that's not yet poisonous, or a chemical that is poisonous but has no means of being injected because the stinger itself, the apparatus, is not yet there because of evolution hasn't produced it, would not be a benefit to the organism. Natural selection would remove it. You see what I mean? You can't. How do you get the stinger in the tail of a scorpion to evolve? By natural selection. You can't. In any step along its development, unless it's functional, it would be removed by natural selection because it's a hindrance to the organism's body. It requires energy to maintain, and it might even be a detriment to the organism, and natural selection would get rid of it.
Reality is that all this stuff like that would have to appear all at once.
That's right. It would have to appear completely fully formed, or it could not be selected for by natural selection.
Yeah, you ever heard the term, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Well, of course, the chicken must come first. You know?
That's right. God made the chicken first.
You have a full-grown adult to make a chicken.
That's right.
And they go, no,
See, that's why their incremental doesn't work. I mean, the first fruit fly experiments were trying to make spontaneous evolution occur, and it never happened.
What happened to the moth? Remember the moth?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
What moth? The black and the white one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not exactly what I'm talking about.
I know, you're talking about the fruit fly. I know, I just added on.
No, but what I'm saying is the moth thing is just a variation, but the fruit fly, they were trying to radiate it and everything so it would jump to something, not, uh, like they got extra wings, but that didn't help it any. They get an extra leg or, something would go wacky wrong, but they were trying to, like, jump it, hope it would jump to something else. Like it might jump to a wasp or it might jump to a bee or whatever. They weren't. That's what they were hoping that it would do, but it never would do it. And
Yeah,
so
they were hoping that it would leap forward to and maybe not all the way to a new kind of creature, but it would have
something.
some kind of new fully formed function or feature that would appear, and they got nothing but deformity and weakness and death.
Yeah, and all they got, and all they did was, they might got something with 4 wings, but all it was a copy of what was already there that was out of place. That's all. They just got a copy out of place of the original wings.
Yeah. There's a fella in, I'm sorry. There's a fella in here named Sydney. Sydney, I don't know if you know this, but if you wanted to use the microphone and discuss the subject, all you have to do is unmute yourself. You can do so by clicking the microphone icon at the top.
Thank you. Nice to see you guys.
Hello.
How are you guys? I've
Yeah,
been listening to you for a while.
Good.
And quite frankly, I'm not a scientist nor a geneticist. But what I'd like to do is maybe change the format a little bit. Evan or Nephilim has been talking without interruption about scientific matters. So I was just wondering if it would be appropriate as a balance for me to have a chat uninterrupted about theological matters.
Well, the subject of this hangout is evolution theory, whether or not it's scientific, and how it's not scientific. If you'd like to discuss that,
Well, you made a few assertions and claims that didn't really make any difference to whether evolution was one way or the other. You made a claim something like random mutation is needed for evolution or something like that. Necessary for evolution, and I don't quite understand why you make a claim like that.
Well, because organisms are defined by genetic information, and so for the anatomy of the organism to change, you have to have there would have to be a grand scale change in the genetic information. You would need new genetic information that would code for new features.
Okay, now you got to take this point by point because you've already lost me.
Okay.
The basic premise was that it is necessary for natural selection for random mutation to take place for evolution to succeed. That's
Yes,
your claim?
Because see, if you have the information of Sydney, I don't know what's going on, but whenever somebody speaks, you have a chattering going on in your. I don't know what's causing that.
It's not mine. It's
his mic.
It's been muted.
It's Israel. I don't know what's going on with that.
It's just feedback.
Yeah. But, well, consider this. The information in the genome of a fly defines the features of a fly.
I can't talk to genetics. I don't know genetics.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you this. Maybe if you don't know.
Again, you're not a scientist.
Well, maybe
I'm not going to. Okay, with all due respect, you're not a scientist, and I don't take scientific facts or deductions of scientific facts seriously from a theist.
Okay, well then maybe you're in the wrong hangout. Maybe you're in the wrong hangout.
Well, okay. Well, it was fun listening.
We're about reasoning, not authoritory. You think that experts
I was quite happy.
only comes from authority? Is that what you're saying? That only authority can speak to something? Because reasoning
that was my point.
Authority came from the ability to reason things out, and people have some kind of title that was given by Christians, started it to kind of indicate that they've had some study, and they may have a little more study than you, and so you want to
Okay, fair
listen to
enough.
them.
Well,
But it doesn't
well,
change the authority or the
I
reasoning.
agree. I agree. I have no argument with that. But
well, not only
when I
that.
came in, I suggested that I talk about things biblical because you guys spoke about things scientific, and you said no, I can't do that. And so I tried to get involved in the conversation that you were having, and I'm obviously not fitting in. So okay, I agree. I don't
Well,
fit into this particular hangout of yours, and I will take my leave. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
Have a good evening. But I mean, if we wanted to turn that around on him, I mean, we could just say, well, then we shouldn't take anything you have to say either. What evidence do you have that you're an authority on the matter of
or authority on
theology?
religion. I don't get
Right,
that.
religion. How am I supposed to accept your assertions as being that from? I don't accept statements on theology from anyone who's not an authority. And so, what are your credentials? You can do the same thing.
Well, you can't be authority unless you're a Christian, and
Well,
say that you know Christianity and are authority on it,
see,
on
that's
the
the
religion
kind
of
of
Christianity, then that would skip you out.
that's the kind of fallacious nature of some of these atheist arguments against the things that any Christian has to say. This is the kind of absurd argument to get. Well, I don't have to believe what you say because you're not an authority. Well, then, if you just stop for a second and think about what you said, then there's no reason for me to take your assertions, even though if you're not an authority, especially if it relates to Christianity. But the thing is, I don't care if somebody's an authority or not. I don't shy from debate. I've debated a couple of scientists, and there's a debate with Dan Larhammer of University of Uppsala in Sweden on my YouTube channel right now. Anybody can listen to, where I debated a PhD in molecular biology. I don't shy from debate, and he's an authority in the matter. I'm not, but I took him on. I am afraid to say, I'm not trying to boast or anything. I'll just tell it straight up. I owned him.
You destroyed them.
And,
Well,
and
reality is, it's
and
about reasoning. It's about reasoning. It's not about what title you have. People have misconstrued since Christians gave people a title to show how much study they've done. They throw out reasoning and for title. That doesn't make sense. Because that's all they have. I mean, they don't have any reasoning, so they have to throw out reasoning and just go for the title and say, "Well, I've studied, you haven't," or "They've studied and you have." In a professional setting or whatever, they have.
right. It's just another atheist's attempt to appeal to authority as a way of shutting out any argument produced by a Christian. Same thing. They do it. They never endlessly do that.
That's because you can't take on the reasoning. If you could take on the reasoning, you wouldn't have to appeal to authority. Except for quotations which show that you have people in authority agree with you, or making a point. But it's about referencing reasoning, not referencing just because they have authority.
Right. That's right. And it's just another appeal to authority of evolutionists. Here's another reason.
I mean, it's like you said, when you show that if you take a part of an evolutionist that actually reasons your way and actually makes statements that support the creationists, and they throw them under the bus.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Even though they still believe even though that person still believes in evolution, they just realize that the logic isn't working. If that's in a particular area, then they just throw them under the bus.
Right. In a way, it's a way of punishing as well any scientist who tries to who accidentally puts forth any argument that goes against evolution, even if they're an evolutionist. They'll crucify their own. Just hold on to the theory. Yeah. Here's another reason that evolution isn't scientific. If it were scientific, evolutionists would not point to variations within a kind, such as varieties of moth, butterfly, or fish, and claim their transitional forms when their anatomies don't show any development of new anatomical features transitioning from their features to that of new biomechanical functions. So, for example, if If you have an organism that, varieties of moth, let's say, and they vary, in the shape of the wings, the color, and the size, how hairy they are, or whatnot. And but you take another moth, and he's very different looking. But you examine them carefully, look at them with a magnifying glass. You'll see they have exactly the same features in the same location of that same body plan. They only vary a bit. The hairs are thicker, there's more of them, a different color, the shape of the wings is different. The head is larger, the head might be shaped a little differently on this one than that one, but they're still 100% moth. Even though one of them is black and huge and the other one's small and gray. They're still a moth. There's no anatomical difference between them. See, but evolutionists will look at these varieties of a kind of creature and claim one is transitional form to another. Not necessarily with this moth example. I use that just to show what a variation between a kind is, and they do this kind of thing with evolutionists, with creatures, and they'll say one is an evolutionary transitional form, but they don't show any anatomical difference. See, so if evolution theory were scientific, they would not use such examples. They would use actual examples of anatomical change, not variations within a kind. Also, if evolution were scientific, evolutionists would not point to extinct species in the rock record and claim that it's a transitional form. When it doesn't demonstrate any transition, it's just an extinct species. What the fossil record shows is that there aren't any transitional forms that can be discerned from anything in the rocks. A creature is still living today, unchanged except for slight variation, and like I said, color, size, shape, or pattern, or it's extinct. That's what the rocks show. A creature is no longer existing in this world, that its kind of creature is gone and no examples live anymore, or it hasn't changed in all these supposed millions of years. So if evolution were true, they wouldn't point to creatures in the fossil record as transitional forms when they're extinct, because they don't show the anatomical change from one kind of creature to another. And so it's not evidence of evolution. Also, if evolution were scientific, they would accept the clear fact that the features of the genome of any organism are empirical evidence for creation. Since this multi-dimensional information package, which is algorithmic, possesses human language properties, and organized to conform to linguistics laws, overlapping, nested, double helix, three-dimensional information package with multiple hierarchies of information, and a computer-like information processing, including copy, cut, insert, paste, this kind of thing, or move, proofread, these kinds of features, they would accept that evidence is empirical evidence of creation. Because once we scientifically learned these properties of DNA, they would stop promoting evolution theory. So if they were treating evolution theory in a scientific manner, once those properties of DNA were discovered, they would have immediately given up evolution theory. But it's not scientific, so they won't give it up, even though we've got the empirical proof it's not true, in the form of genetics. Also, if evolution theory were true, evolutionists would not cite as evidence for their theory things which have no potential to cause anatomical change from one kind of organism to another, such as gaining immunities, or the ability of bacteria to synthesize an enzyme, to utilize an enzyme to digest nylon. Neither of those things, both of those are examples of intelligent design, and neither one of them have the power to change the anatomy. So if evolution were scientific, they wouldn't cite things that are not evolutionary mechanisms as evidence of evolutionary, as being evidence that there are evolutionary mechanisms. You see what I mean? They would just say, well, I admit this is not an evolutionary mechanism. We're still looking for that. Instead, they cite things that have no potential to cause the evolutionary change, the change in the anatomy of the organism, as evidence of evolution. If evolution were scientific, they would cite the actual evidence of the theory and not changes that organisms can experience that have no potential to cause evolutionary change, like gaining an immunity or the ability to digest nylon. Because no matter how many times you gain an immunity or how many different things you can digest, it's not going to change your anatomy one bit towards moving it towards another, becoming another kind of life. You see? So why do they cite these kinds of things as evidence for evolution? Well, because it's not scientific to believe in evolution. Evolution isn't scientific. If it were scientific, they show the actual evidence of evolution, not point to things that have no potential to be evolutionary change. Also, if evolution theory were scientific, evolutionists wouldn't, as they often do, turn their arguments away from evolution towards the existence or non-existence of God when they get in debate. You'll notice that when you debate evolution theory with the atheists a lot, they'll get exasperated very quickly. Many of them will get exasperated very quickly, and instead of wanting to debate the subject of evolution, all of a sudden now it's prove your God exists, or your God is, there's no such thing as God. So because they get exasperated for not being able to provide evidence of what they claim is true, they jump ship and they lock on to let's challenge the existence of your God. Well, I don't have any problem with debating those kinds of things, but what I cite as evidence that evolution is not scientific is the fact that atheists do this so quickly, and so many of them do. I'm not talking about 1 out of every 20. I mean 1 out of every so many. They will very quickly want to change the subject from evolution because they can't provide evidence for it to God. I don't really have so much a problem with that. I'm just saying what it reveals is something. It reveals that if evolution was scientific, they would stick to the subject and they would provide the evidence and refute you and show you to be a fool for believing in creation. Instead, they get exasperated, they jump ship, and they want to talk about why there's no reason to believe in God. See, if evolution theory was scientific, they would just own you to pieces with scientific evidence. But because they can't do that, they move their heart is determined. Evolution theory is an idea that is hung on to by these people, not because it's scientific, because they think it's an excellent excuse for denying the existence of God. And that demonstrates it right there. Now, I don't have any problem with somebody changing the subject and talking about the existence of God or not, most of the time. I didn't want to do that tonight. At least not so soon after getting really started talking about evolution. But that's what they love to do. And it demonstrates they're not being scientific because they simply want to deny the existence of God. And they think evolution theory is the best excuse for doing it.
Right. Well, he couldn't defend evolution, so he had to jump to the religion right away. That's what his forte was, is to, cut down our religion.
Yeah.
I see that a lot in debates where they start attacking the Bibles. I see that a lot with a lot of
Well, we ripped them apart on that one too.
Like Ken Ham and Kent Hovind, they always attack when they destroy them about the evolution theory. They'll start attacking the Bible or quote something that they say about God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow, really? You're gonna start switching the argument from scientific biology to the Bible? Like, okay.
Well, I like the way they go. I like the way they say, well, if that one's no good, why don't you provide one? Why don't you provide an explanation if that explanation isn't right? Where's your theory on how things came about or something like that? Nephilim had a good comeback once on that. I forgot what he said, but exactly. You know what I'm talking about when they're always saying, why don't you come up with something then?
What would prove evolution, you mean? Or what would prove God?
Well, they always, that's what they do, is it's like, well, if that theory's wrong, why don't you come up with something to replace it with? Why don't you replace evolution? What's your theory that replaces evolution theory?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, what? Why do we need to replace it? It doesn't work.
Right. Replace it. Yeah, that's a good point. What, it has to be replaced with something?
Yeah, I mean, they go with that one.
Just what is. We don't need to replace it with anything. Creation just is the truth. That's
right. creation is what it is.
It is what it is. That's right. By the way, these arguments I'm giving for evolution,
That argument.
these reasons to believe that we can know evolution theory is not scientific are coming from an article that I wrote on my blog back in October 1st of 2014. I have 15 of them. I've only given about 7. I could probably give 50, but I've only given about 10. I have several more that I can explain. It's a pretty lengthy article. Anybody that wants to check that out, you can go to nephilimfree.blogspot.com and read the articles themselves or some of the other articles I've written. Another reason we can know evolution theory isn't scientific is that evolutionists would not speak of evolution theory as though it were a fact, since it's not observable. They would simply acknowledge that it's only theoretical, but they preach it, teach it, and defend it as though it's a science fact. And anybody who argues against them, they'll discredit them, slander them, shoot them to the moon, throw them under the bus, whatever they have to do to silence them, because they don't want arguments against their views to be public. Also, if evolution theory is scientific, I'm not reading these. I'm just skimming what I've written in my blog and just touching upon them from my own words. I'm not reading what I've written in my blog. Another reason is that if evolution theory were scientific, it would not be endlessly evolving to adopt new knowledge that refutes evolution theory and then twist it as though it's just so story to explain away the new discovery. For example, they'll discover something new, and let's say a new feature in DNA. Say they discovered it back when they discovered that genetic information was overlapping in nested sequences of information share-based pairs. This is a problem for evolution theory, because how do you get random genetic mutation to build more than one sequence of information at the same time? And so the evolutionist would just say, well, mutation created the genetic sequence, and then mutation somehow wrote a code over the top of that one, and so and then it wrote a code hidden within this one, and at the same time not destroying the codes that it was rewriting. It still would be creating more than one sequence of information at the same time. And so evolutionists just ignore the basic fact that it's illogical to believe that random mutation could do this, and they go on claiming evolution is true. And another reason is that if evolutionists treated evolution scientifically, they would not militaristically defend evolution theory by discriminating against, even creating personal smear campaigns to ostracize anybody who doubts evolution theory or provides an argument against its weaknesses in academia. And that's what they always do. They'll throw them under the bus. Any scientist who put forth an argument that evolution isn't true within the scientific community or within the education system, he's a goner. He's a stout. They'll take his career away. You're over with, just for challenging evolution theory, or even challenging one student to question evolution theory, or asking questions of the class or anyone that provide a problem for evolution that demands a strong answer, even if they claim they don't understand it and they want somebody to explain it to them. By doing that, you've dissented from Darwin, and you're an evil heretic, and they will throw you out, throw you under the bus. They'll create a smear campaign to discredit you, call all the work you've done as an academic to be bogus, because you're not obviously good enough at what you do, that you came up with this ridiculous idea that there's anything questionable about evolution. And they wouldn't treat each other, they wouldn't treat anybody who questions evolution theory in this way if it were scientific. So.
Yeah, if it's scientific, they won't throw their own kind under the bus.
Oh, they will throw their own kind under the bus.
No, I'm saying that if the theory of Darwin evolution was true, they won't throw people under the bus.
And not for questioning it, right? Because they would be treating it as scientific, and it would be completely scientific to question a theory which is lacking in evidence. And so,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say all they have to do is what we do, and that's reason it away. I mean, we don't throw anybody under the bus because they believe in evolution. We just, we have Christians that believe in evolution. We don't say because you believe in evolution that you're kicked out. You're not a
Right.
Christian.
Right.
We say, hey, this is the reason why that's not true. All you have to do is reason it away. If a theory is true, if evolution is true, then you don't have to kick people out. All you have to do is reason with them until they see the light.
That's exactly right. And if a Christian believes in evolution, and like you said, we might correct him. We might even do it so harshly. On some cases, if they're ardently preaching the idea, we might show them that they're preaching against the Word of God. They're preaching something that's not scientific, that's something that's been disproven. And we might even get a little tough with them if they're super resistant to the truth. But we're not going to claim they're not a Christian and kick them out of church.
Right.
You're exactly right. Yeah. So we don't treat our kind the way they treat theirs.
Mm-hmm.
When evolution theory is challenged. And you're right. You're exactly right.
No, we
Or
don't throw our own
any other thing that Christians disagree with, they reason together. They don't say, okay, you don't agree with me and I'm the authority, so leave. You're gone. You're no longer the Christian.
Yeah, we might
God told me you're not a Christian now.
we might get angry with them if they're really fighting for evolution. We might get frustrated by it. We might get a little tough on them. But we're not going to claim they're not a Christian and kick them out of church, just like you said. It's just not the way we treat our own.
Unless they teach red herring.
Unless they're teaching, heresies.
Yeah.
In a way, evolution theory is a heresy because it claims that God didn't create anything. But we have to make allowances. After all, evolution theory is promoted hard and heavy by the evolutionist camp, and it's indoctrinated a lot of people. And now, if a Christian were going around teaching that Jesus Christ wasn't God manifest in the flesh and he was never crucified, but yet he's, but he calls himself a Christian, a follower of Jesus, so I'm a Christian. There might be a time when you say, you know what, you're not one of our fold. That's all it is to it. But that's not the same thing as what we're talking about here, is it? Believing in evolution doesn't mean you're a heretic and you're dead set on destroying Christianity, or you're doing anything that's going to be very real destructive to it. I'd say evolution theory is destructive towards Christianity, but it's not in the same way. So another reason the evolution theory isn't scientific is that the majority of scientists in the ruling bodies of scientific community, they would not be atheists, demonstrating that evolutionists, they'll throw you under the bus if you question it. So the fact that evolution theory is so heavily defended by an atheistic clan within the scientific community is evidence that evolution theory isn't scientific, but it's an atheistic religious idea. Another reason is that evolutionists would let go of their failed uniformitarianism theory, which and their ideas about the supposed geologic column, but they need that to support evolution theory, because if the Earth is millions and millions and hundreds of millions of years old, you don't have the time for evolution, even though if it's been discovered that by studying the amount of time in the imagination of the evolutionist, still would not nearly be enough time to explain all the features of living things in this world by evolution. So
It would need trillions of years, huh?
You would need trillions, and there still isn't enough time. So they wouldn't cling so fervently to uniformitarianism. See, they need the uniformitarianism to claim the evolution is true, because without the hundreds of millions of years, you don't have the imaginary time for evolution. So
They use panspermium, right? They're going to panspermium. Yeah. Richard Dawkins believes that. He wrote that in his book. The alien life, intelligent life created us outside of our planet, our solar system. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's funny.
So anyway, those are some of the reasons we know that evolution theory is not scientific. It's actually philosophical. Democritus an ancient Arab Muslim, wrote a history called the Konlund in 1377, which he spoke of evolution. Democritus, Aristotle, Plato, these and several others, Anaximander. Ancient ideas about evolution came from these men's minds, even chemical evolution, biological evolution, macroevolution. These ideas were written about by these men in ancient times, long before man knew the first thing about biology. In fact, Aristotle wrote of natural selection back in his time. You see, the evolution theory came to Europeans in the 1700s through the Greek classics, because if you were a European schoolboy in 1780 or 1840, you were required to read the Greek classics. This was required literature in your schooling. And this is where these men got the idea of evolution, was from the writings of these ancient philosophers. And so looking for, as a humanists, during this rise of humanism that took place during the 18th century and into the 19th century, they were looking for an excuse to deny the existence of God, specifically the Judeo-Christian God, because the cross of Jesus Christ was offensive to them. They were humanists. And so they latched onto the idea of evolution that they got from the Greek classics, and they tried to make it into a modern scientific theory. So evolution never began as scientific. It began as ancient Greek philosophy. Before that, it was Hindu philosophy. The Hindus gave it to the Greeks. The Greeks got it and gave it to the Westerners in Europe, and that's where the idea came from. And they tried to make it into a scientific theory, and it's failed ever since.
It's a religion.
It is.
So it's all the God denial.
That's the reason it exists. If it wasn't, if Satan didn't exist, evolution theory wouldn't exist. He's the promoter of these ideas. He's the inspirer. All these grand lies of this world are brought about because of his little twinkling and working his fingers through the ball to deceive the world. And so evolution theory, if there weren't men that disbelieve in God, specifically the Christian God, evolution theory as a modern idea would not exist, because modern scientific thinking men would reject this ancient philosophy that has been demonstrated false by modern science.
Well, so there's the reasoning. I was just thinking about the NASA scientists when they're talking about water on Mars. That the last statement I heard of the soundbite was the guy said, under certain circumstances, we have found liquid water on Mars.
They think they've found evidence of liquid water, yeah.
Right, evidence of it. And I'm like, what? But no, that's what he actually said. He said, under certain circumstances, we have found. What do you mean under certain circumstances? Did you send a drop of water with that rover thing that you sent up there, Well, they just drop that water on there and go, hey, we found water on Mars.
What it boils down to is they've discovered that there looks like some flows on the surface of the planet.
No, but I'm just talking about that particular statement. It was so unscientific. Because he said under certain circumstances, we have found water on Mars. What are certain circumstances?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's kind of like
it's completely unscientific. Why? That's the same kind of reasoning and logic they use in evolution, and people believe it. Under certain circumstances, things evolved, but those circumstances don't exist. That for evolution, I don't know what they're the certain circumstances of water on Mars could be that they sent it fell off their rover, that somehow some water was in their rover and it sweated off, and when they sent it there, I don't know,
Yeah, it's a pretty nebulous thing to say. Under certain circumstances, we found water. But what they have found is what looks to be some flows on the surface of Mars. And then when photographed later, it looks like the flows have changed because there has been actually flowing. And they've done this a number of times. They've photographed these flows, and they've seen that they look like they've changed because some material, liquid material, is flowing across
What
the
about
surface.
what about strong winds?
Moving sediments. No, it's too much like sediment, liquid. It looks too much like a liquid flow. But even if they found water on Mars, that's great. But the only thing, I don't have a problem with that. The Word of God says God created the planets out of the waters. He created the heavens out of the waters. I would expect to find water in planets. It doesn't
Yeah.
bother me that as a
No,
Christian.
I don't have any problem finding
Well,
water either. It's
I know you don't, but the only problem is that the atheist camp, what they do is they say, look, there's reason to believe that life evolved on that planet and hopscotched from there to here,
right.
hundreds of millions, billions of years ago. Or that if there's water there, this is how the Earth got its water. It's evidence that the Earth got water somehow. They believe all kinds of crazy things. It doesn't support atheism. It doesn't support evolutionism just because there's water on Mars. Even if there actually is, and they haven't actually confirmed it, they just have evidence that it may be there. And it could be that there is some water there. It might not be water for all we know. It might be liquid nitrogen or something. I don't know. I don't guess it could be liquid nitrogen. There's not enough atmospheric pressure to make liquid nitrogen remain liquid on Mars. But
Well, there is liquid water on one of the moons.
they don't know for sure. So what if it is water? That's great, but that doesn't support evolutionism in any way. Just because there's water there, you've got to be able to explain evolution with chemistry and with observable results. You need biological evidence of evolution, not just the fact that there's no water been discovered on Mars. That's not going to be evidence of anything except there's water on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I find evidence of round things in a parking lot on the ground, that doesn't mean that, oh, look, you know, every round thing on the Earth evolved from these round things on the parking lot. What kind of extrapolation is that? You know, that's nonsense. But they believe in the abiogenesis was written about by ancient philosophers. The idea that matter organized itself and became living creatures. The spontaneous generation idea is an old idea. Abiogenesis. You know, guys in the 40s or 50s, or even late 1800s, they're not the first ones that came up with that idea. That idea came up a long time ago, a very long time ago, 1,000 years or less before Christ. Centuries before Jesus Christ, these ancient Greek philosophers were writing that matter organized itself into living things. This is not new. It's not scientific.
Didn't the evolutionists used to think that flies used to just pop out of meat?
Yes, they did. And it was Louis Pasteur that proved that wrong. By the way,
Christian. Oh, wait a minute. Christian creationist.
Yeah, a creationist, a scientist.
Can't trust that.
Right. A Christian creationist scientist proved abiogenesis. The basis of it was at least faulty reasoning, and with his experiments, yeah. What he did was he put meat inside a jar and sealed it, and that prevented flies from getting in, laying eggs on it, and so you get flies looking like they're coming up out of the meat. See, so he closed it up. He said, "I got an idea. If you don't let flies in, maybe none will come out." So he closed it up, put the meat in, closed it up so that no flies could get in it, and the meat simply rotted, but no flies ever arose. And he said, well, there you have it. Meat does not produce flies. You got to get a fly to go in, lay its eggs on the meat, then you get more flies. I mean, just a little.
I don't know how he figured that out, being a creationist.
Oh yeah, no stupid creation.
I don't know how to figure that out.
Enough for that.
That can't be true. It can't be true that he figured it out.
No, you got to throw him under the bus.
He wasn't a true scientist, but
no, that's right.
That out.
No, he's not. Just because he invented the vaccination for polio or something, you know. I don't know. No, that was Jonas Salk. Yeah, that was Salk.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. But anyway, that's the way they treat you. They treat any dissenter from evolution theory is treated that way, and it's a grand lie. It's a huge lie that's used to promote naturalism because these people can't stand the idea of having God's moral authority over them. And so because of that, they're willing to believe anything is the explanation for the origin of man and all the life in this world, anything but God. There can't be a creator, and it sure can't be that God, a biblical one. That's the most offensive God in the world to them. Isn't it funny that atheists believe that Jesus Christ is the most offensive character in the history of the world? To him, nobody gets on the nerves of an atheist more than Jesus Christ. Nobody.
That's true.
You
They
know,
hate me without a
C.S. Lewis said he was an atheist converted to Christianity. He was a prominent Christian apologist and an author, and the movie Narnia was based on a book of his, which was based loosely on the story of Jesus Christ, by the way. He said an atheist can't find God for the same reason a thief can't find a policeman. And he was exactly right.
Exactly right. Crazy.
Yeah, that's true. They just run from him. They don't want to know him. Don't want anything to do with him. They just absolutely abstain. That's why they can't find God. Oh, and they kill me. And they say, I was a Christian. I believed, and I was in a church going, and then, I realized that God didn't exist. And so I came out of those beliefs. No, you were never a Christian. They were never a believer. They were trying to make themselves believe, or they were actually pretending to be looking, and they were going through all this so that they could say with a clear conscience, they think later on, when they jumped out of Christianity, which is what they had already intended to do, that they just didn't see, they let their heart convince themselves that God didn't exist because they didn't want any part of God. That's all it is. But anyway, this evolution theory is sick and perverted. It's a perversion of science, and it's used to promote a great deal of lies, and it's used to indoctrinate children to believe that naturalism is the explanation for their existence. And that, to me, is the most offensive thing about evolution theory. That there are 6 to 8, 10, 12-year-old kids sitting in front of a TV watching a Nova program or a National Geographic TV show, which is promoting the garbage out of evolution theory, pumping this lie into the minds of gullible 8-year-olds, and making them believe that the Bible's myth and they don't have a creator. And that is, to me, the most offensive thing about the whole evolution lie.
Or how about when they go through museums and they see all those big giant dinosaur bones?
Yeah,
that drives me more nuts because there's kids that go in there every day.
Oh, I know it. Look, school trip, right?
Every day they go in there.
A whole busload of kids, or 2-3 busloads of kids at a time, go in there and see all these lies, get their head filled with these lies. You came from the earth, little ones. We originally squiggled up out of the mud, and now look at us. That just sickens me. What kind of trash is that to put in the mind of a child? And it's so false. And then they pump the minds of kids with this garbage. It's been disproven for 100 years.
They got like the so-called horse display, the evolution of horse.
Mm-hmm.
They still have those on display. They have the Lucy still on display, and all those have been debunked and not classified as the missing link. It's like, why you guys still have that on there? It's like, those need to be down. Those are lies. Well, we can't do that,
Yeah,
we don't have the funds. Oh, really? How much is it? $100. Here's $100. Take it down.
Yeah. In fact, about the horse evolution thing, Gordon Rattay Taylor, who wrote The Great evolution mystery in 1984. He said this on page 230. He said, but perhaps the most serious weakness of Darwinism is the failure of paleontologists to find convincing phylogenies or sequences of organisms demonstrating major evolutionary change. The horse is often cited as the one fully worked out example, but the fact is that the line from Eohippus to Equus is very erratic. It is alleged to show a continual increase in size, but the truth is some variants were smaller than Eohippus, not larger. Specimens from different sources can be brought together in a convincing-looking sequence, but there is no evidence that they were actually arranged in this order in time. Isn't that something? And
That's what I'm saying is under certain circumstances, they have proved evolution.
Oh yeah,
Under
yeah.
Under the circumstances that they, left evidence out.
Right.
They only picked out the evidence that they wanted to put in there.
And that they arrange organisms to look like a progression when they
right.
were.
So under certain circumstances, they can prove evolution.
Yeah.
If you change those circumstances, and then you're being scientific and you prove it wrong.
That's right. In fact, it's now known that some of these creatures that were claimed to be evidence of transitional forms from one kind of creature to another that produced horses were coexisting. They coexisted. One didn't come after the other by any great measure of time. They lived together for millions of years. Well, so how is that evolution when they coexisted with horses? It's nonsense.
Coexisted. Wow.
I've got quite a bit of information about this horse evolution thing, and there's it's just been ridiculous. Even Stephen Jay Gould, the famous Harvard paleontologist, who promoted the punctuated equilibria theory, he acknowledged that this organization of animals that are called a transitional demonstration of the evolution of horses was based on no real evidence whatsoever. So even Stephen Jay Gould acknowledged it, and a number of others have.
Yeah, he said there's none.
Yeah, and so what are they doing displaying it? Well, they've taken those down from the museums. I don't know if any still exist in museums or not, but that doesn't change anything. They've got 19 others to replace them with. 19 other false supposed transitions to display. 90 others. And they'll only remove those when they're so thoroughly beat down and proven false that even the general public can't stop looking at it. They can't look at each other with a straight face anymore. Only then will they remove it. That's the only way they got rid of the horse evolution thing. The scientists embarrassed each other with their arguments proving it's false. Hey, Joe, do you know the evolution of the horse series that we have? There's no evidence for that. That can't be correct. These creatures were coexisting. Yeah, I know, Joe. When are we going to take that museum thing down? I guess we ought to. I don't know. What do you say? Maybe we should leave it up another year. I don't really want to mess with it. It's just sad the way these people are. Anyway,
I think the funding they don't have to take it down is that they'll lose funding if they take it down.
Well, maybe that, but they also hate to admit failure of the evolution theory.
Or they lose their job.
Yeah, sure.
Yep, guys, it's getting late. I'm going to kill the hangout.
All right.
Yep, I appreciate you coming. And
thanks for having us.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for having us enough.
Okay, guys. Y'all have a blessed evening. We'll catch you next time, huh?
All right.
All right. Night, Westcott.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.